Hi, Joe. How are you doing? Good afternoon, sir. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Sibos Meet the Experts webinar. My name is Colin Camp. I'm the Business Development Director for APAC for Pelican.ai. Pelican.ai are a technology provider specializing in artificial intelligence solutions for the financial services industry. And we focus on two main areas of financial services around payments optimization and financial crime compliance. Today's session is entitled Leveraging AI and Data for Compliance and Payments Optimization. It gives me great pleasure today to introduce the speaker, Mr. Parth Desai. Parth's been one of the innovators in deploying artificial intelligence into the financial services industry. Parth is the Pelican.ai CEO, and he founded the company almost 25 years ago. Before I hand over to Parth, just a bit of housekeeping. Please keep your videos off, microphones on mute, please. You do have the opportunity to ask questions as Parth goes through his presentation. We believe Parth's presentation will last probably 20 to 25 minutes, so hopefully we'll have time to cover those questions. If not, then we'll cover them at a later date and we'll contact you. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your attendance. I'd like now to invite Parth to start his presentation. Over to you, Parth.
Yes, thank you, Colin. And good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So before I go into the details of presentation, I would just like to give you a quick background on the company. Pelican.ai started about 25 years ago as a fintech specializing in payments and compliance and using artificial intelligence. We started working in this domain for processing emails and telexes and converting them into Swift. So I believe Sibos is the right place to talk about this. We actually converted emails and telexes into Swift MT100, which is one of the first payment messages being transmitted on Swift. After 9/11, we started applying natural language processing and artificial intelligence to sanctions and compliance and sanction screening. And we have been applying more and more techniques in various domains of financial crime compliance like AML, fraud detection, and TBML since then. So that is our pedigree, and I believe that in this presentation, I would be able to share some experiences and our viewpoint on how AI can be leveraged for payments and compliance. So for one of the main things we all will agree on, that the world has changed in last 18 months. About 2 years, things have, we have gone through some tough times recently, but we all agree that these things are, the world has changed. Hopefully it has changed for the better. We have learned some things. I think we have learned to change our habits. That travel is less. We have gone more digital. We are using less fuel all over the world, and these kind of advantages and changes, I think, are for the better, and definitely they are forever. Things have changed. Now, yes, there are some challenges, but it's not all doom and gloom. There are several opportunities that we see on horizon, and I think we need to learn to exploit them. One of the main things that we have learned recently is that the business had gone down in the last 18 months, but things are looking good. The number of payments that are expected that we're going to process in coming years is going to increase rapidly, and there is going to be growth all around. Now, how are we getting ready to exploit this? Are we all ready to exploit this opportunity and compete with the newcomers like fintechs and neobanks and capture the market and growing share of the market as it grows in the coming years. But I believe that that is not the case, and that is something that I would like to address in this presentation and discussion. Our compliance and operations costs are increasing. The economy has lost about $1.6 trillion in last few years from the whole economy because of organized crime. There are $26 billion of fine levied on financial institutions in last 10 years, and about $3.2 billion of costs are being incurred by financial institutions on just addressing false positive and using manual processes every year. That is a lot of money being wasted and not optimized for positive growth for the economy, for the bank, for the countries. Now, all these costs are also manual. We have these 80% of financial crime compliance costs are being spent on manual efforts, and 90% of them are on false positives. This is something that is really problematic because not only because of manual work, you'll have errors, you'll have delays, and you can't grow quickly. In order to survive and thrive in this domain, we need to be able to act quickly. We need to be able to react to instantaneous demands of customers. We need to work in an environment which is 24/7. Everybody is expecting things to be done immediately. There is no longer 3 days, 5 days available to process payments. Everything is required now and within seconds. And again, other point is that it is not 24/7. Sorry, it is 24/7 and not 9 to 5 any longer. We have to work every day, even Saturday, Sunday. The systems have to work. And how can we make that happen? Now, that is where what we need is something that is systematic, with something that has systematic efficiency with human intelligence. That is where the artificial intelligence comes in. We need something to keep on working 24/7 instantaneously, without errors, without any mistakes, and without getting tired or getting confused. That is where artificial intelligence comes in. We have to not only streamline and use artificial intelligence to streamline our processes, but also to increase our revenues, gain market share, and last but not least, increase customer loyalty. So AI is good to have. It was good to have. However, nowadays AI is a must-have. You need AI to survive and thrive in this economy, and that is what I'm going to talk about in coming the rest of the presentation. However, before I dig deep into the advantages of AI, let me first explain what I mean by AI. Now, AI is simulation of human intelligence. So wherever we show the human skills, intelligent human skills in an artificial manner, we say the software or the system is artificial intelligence. Now, in financial services, we need to show and use our human cognitive skills. We need to simulate the way people think and behave intelligently while looking at information, processing information, analyzing information. This is where the two disciplines of AI, which are machine learning and natural language processing, come into play. So that is where we will focus on and talk how machine learning and natural language processing helps financial services to gain more revenues and reduce the operational costs. Now, machine learning, let's look at one by one. First, machine learning helps us in learning from past results and actions automatically. You don't need to program rules. You don't need to write Java code to actually make something happen. The system will automatically learn and start behaving the way it has observed the operations to happen in the past. So it learns and applies its knowledge to the process to actually solve the problem automatically. However, it may not be 100% correct. In that case, we have a chance to refine the results, and it will constantly keep on learning. So as the processing happens more and more, you keep on improving your knowledge, you're improving your machine learning technology, and it will keep on improving and performing better. On the other hand, we have natural language processing, which basically helps us think like a human being. It is able to read the information, it's able to analyze the information, it understands the information by using conceptual analysis, looking at the context and applying the normal common sense the humans use. Also, it's allowed to, or is able to reason and analyze the information. And last but not the least, it remembers the information that it has processed and then pass on to the other products like or other solutions like machine learning to expand on that. So you must have heard that data is the heart of AI. So without good data, you are not able to learn automatically using machine learning. So that is where we see the interplay between these two technologies. So we can use natural language processing, which can understand like humans do free format information. We can read unstructured data. It can understand English, German, French, the language which people are used to while communicating with each other. So the problem we have is, how do we communicate easily, intuitively with the computers who understand bits and bytes? So that's where the natural language converts our meaning into the code that computer can understand, the numbers and bits and bytes that computer can understand. So using natural language processing, even if you have unstructured data, you have free format data, you have English, German, French text lying around, it is able to understand, grasp the meaning, of course, in a well-defined context, convert into data that computer can understand. And then if we add that and pass that on to machine learning, we can actually make it better and make AI much better and useful for us, and can be tweaked in many different manners. So let's look at how we can convert the unstructured data into usable structured data. There are two techniques of natural language processing that are very useful in doing this. I would call this data normalization and data enrichment. So you are taking free format data and structuring it, and I would call it normalization. It is unambiguous, it is encoded, and computers can understand. And also, while doing that, we can gain value by doing data enrichment. You can increase the data, you can use the context and common sense that we all know and enrich the data so the data becomes more valuable and usable. So let me expand this by giving you two examples. So all of us look at bank statements. So when the bank statement, you can see a line of text like this, which is a string of numbers and text, with a number and a date, an amount and a date associated with that. But that doesn't give us much information, and computers will also not be able to understand what that is. But if you apply natural language processing, what you get is well-defined, well-structured data. So we can infer looking at the text, and after learning that it is AT&T is a telephone services company in the USA. It is in the industry of telecommunication service, and by default, this would be a charge for telephone services. And it's for the telephone charges that we are paying for. So $24.95 is for the telephone bill that you have, and that is for the month of January. The period is January, and it was sent on 4th of January as a regular subscription. Also, we will also know from the context that the number string starting with 837 ending in 302 is a transaction reference number. You can use that for inquiring the charge, why this charge has come. Now, all this is encoded information. It's all for everybody, it doesn't make sense. But if you can analyze this data through natural language processing, you can get the meaning out of it and make this information usable for various purposes. Let's take another example. Let's take the example in Swift and ISO. ISO 20 or 22 is very important. Nowadays, we are all under migration from the old MT to MX formats, and ISO 20 or 22 is going to play an important role. However, even if you use ISO 20 or 22, the structure, the content of the data, content of the message may not change. The structure may change, but it may still have free format information like this. For example, there is a mention of a Toronto Dominion Bank in Toronto. It's a free format. It doesn't have the data and information that computers need to automatically understand this. So if you apply natural language processing, what we would get is several normalized data like the code in the Swift big code, and you also have the Canadian transit code. You will have, and also analysis and structuring of the data free format text, which is the address. So the address can be converted. There's a street, city, country, the state. Ontario can also be enhanced and enriched to actually in the data, so that you can have meaningful information which can be used for many purposes. This can be used for automating payments. It can be used for compliance and various analysis purposes. So this is where we see the power of data unleashed by natural language processing. Yeah, and if this is fed into machine learning, you can do many more things. So for just one more example, I would like to share on natural language processing, which is contextual analysis, right? So it is basically applying common sense, yeah. And you look at the context and common sense when we read a piece of text. For example, let's focus on the string "baby swallows fly." Right now, there are two interpretations, and it can be clarified if you look at the information before after. Right. So if you are looking at the string "baby swallows fly," with the context that mother panics when baby swallows fly, you understand that baby has a young baby has swallowed a fly insect. Yeah, and that's why she is worried. And other context, after, if you read, say, after 3 weeks, baby swallows fly from their nest, you understand when you talk about swallows, it is the bird swallow who has started flying. The baby swallows have started flying after 3 weeks. So it's a completely different meaning. And you can see here that the context is dependent, the meaning is dependent on the context. And that is what natural language processing allows us to do, just as we normally do so when we read any piece of information. One of the example in the financial crime compliance that I can also cite is that, for example, when you're doing sanction screening, there is a street called Iran Street. So if you have an address called 4211 Iran Street, Denver, Colorado, then most of the softwares will identify the word Iran in this string and say, oh, there is a country Iran, it is blacklisted, you should consider as a hit and reject the message. Yeah, stop the payment. Now, if you use natural language processing, you would figure out that 4211 Iran Street is actually a name of the street in the city Denver, Colorado, which is in the USA, and that is not the payment going to Iran, but actually the beneficiary is perhaps living on on Iran Street. Yeah. So it's a complete difference, and that is where we see the power of natural language coming in. And if we apply this kind of knowledge, and if we learn from this kind of experiences that humans have applied and filtered the transactions in the past and said that these are false positives, you can learn automatically from it. And based on this kind of technology, when we are used, we have been able to reduce false positives by up to 76%. That is a big gain in the reduction, and it's a big gain in capacity, big gain in the processing time, and the volume of transaction that can be processed in a day, and the cost reduction. Yeah. So that is where we see the value of natural language processing and AI coming in detection of false positive. Similarly, we can also optimize payment processing. If you have clean data, structured data, then you can make sure that the payments are routed clearly through the payment systems, payment networks, and optimize or make the payments go straight through. And that is where we see the value of natural language and AI coming in process optimization in payments and compliance. Right now, also let's look at how payments, how AI can be used in the payment processing for revenue generation and increasing our market share. Basically, let's first look at the techniques that AI machine learning provides for improving our processes and offering new products and services. So the first thing that I can talk about is insight and recommendations. So AI and machine learning especially can look into the data which is structured and cleaned by natural language processing to assimilate what are the trends, what are the forecasts, what is the insight, what are the analytics. You can give all this information, a lot of valuable information about the past transactions, and that gives you some insights of the behavior of the system, behavior of the environment around you. Based on that, we can also use predictions and forecast things in future. So based on that, you can, for example, you can do trend analysis, you can predict income and expenses, you can predict cash flow for businesses, for personal individuals, or also for the bank's own treasury. Similarly, you can use AI techniques to identify abnormal transactions. For example, you can identify if there is a fraudulent transaction. You can identify unusual behavior in AML. You can find out if there is a payment that was missed by a party during the set of transaction. If you're looking at all the transaction process in last 6 months, you can see that perhaps a salary payment was missed or was not received, or a bill payment was not done through anomaly detection. The same techniques that can be used in AI, used for AML and fraud detection can also be used for doing credit analysis. Right? Similarly, you can use AI for behavior understanding, how the people are performing, how the people are behaving, why are they behaving, and all this information can then be used for categorizing, segmentation of data, segmentation of your customer, and then applying that applying that knowledge of various segments and the trends and the forecasts for those customer segments in actually offering new products and services. So this is where the value comes in. You offer new products and services and give additional information that customer does not have just by looking at, for example, bank statement. So one of the examples that we have seen is that you can also improve the customer experience when you work with some additional data and insights that you have. For example, this is a use case where we can use the insights and value gained from machine learning to actually inform and guide and assist, for example, here, a business customer. Based on the data that is gained from the bank statements, from the accounting system, you can perform a health check and do a trend analysis of how the customer has been doing in the past 2-3 years, and what you can then predict how things will behave, how the business will behave in the coming months. You can predict when there will be increase in revenues, when there will be decrease in revenues based on seasonality. For example, some business thrive in summer and holiday period, whereas some businesses lose revenues during holiday period. So based on the seasonality, you can see whether the customer with the business will thrive or lose revenues, and also based on that, you can predict whether there is a requirement for a debt or there is going to be excess funds. So all these kind of information can be gained from this data, just doing the analysis. If you have good data, you can analyze the data, do some insights and predictions, and use that data for informing the customer, guiding them and helping them, or also uses for use them internally for optimizing the processes. And based on our experiences, we have learned that AI can deliver. It can deliver with 100% accuracy. And we have seen that some of our customers gain annual revenues over 9 million. They have been able to reduce FPRs by 76%. They have been able to improve their processing, reduce the processing time by 80%, and improve the capacity by up to 400%. These are drastic improvements in cutting the cost, increasing the capacity, and generating revenue, additional revenue. This will enable the banks and financial institutions to compete with the fintechs, compete with neobanks, and also gain market share. Because banks have a lot of data which they have captured over years. They can use this data and analyze this data using natural language processing and machine learning, and they gain valuable insights which can be packaged as product and services to customers to gain loyalty. And I believe that will help the banks to survive and thrive in the coming years. Thank you. I will take any questions if you may have.
Thanks, Parth. Thanks for a very insightful presentation. There have been a few questions that have been directed to me. So the first one, Parth, so you've been deploying AI solutions for over 25 years. Can you share some insights and experience that you've gained during that time?
Yeah, I think one of the premier point that we should remember while we are working in financial services is that we need we need transparency in everything that is done by AI. You need to understand what it is doing, why it is doing, how it is doing. And we should, the AI tools and techniques that you use should be able to explain what it has done and why it has done. And I think AI is based on models and mathematical models and formulae. You need to see what its meaning is. You can't say that it is just because it is 80% scored, it is correct. Yeah, you need to understand, what about 79%? Is it not correct? Is 80% correct and 79% not correct? There is very little difference between 89% and 79, 81 and 79. So I think there has to be explainability which people can understand, which humans can understand, because in the financial services, you need to be able to explain that automation to your internal auditors and also to regulators, right? So this is an important point. And I think we need to, second point is that you don't have to 100% automate, have an automated solution. There is a concept of AI calling autonomous intelligence and augmented intelligence, that you don't have to make everything automatic, 100% automatic, even if it is 80, 90% automatic, where AI is doing the groundwork for you and presenting the information to you in a structured, well-defined manner, and giving you pros and cons of various options available to you. The humans can then make the final decision based on subtleties that cannot be captured by the AI tools yet. Yeah. So I think augmented AI is also good enough, and you can gain significant advantages. We have seen 70–80% improvements in the capacity and the cost reduction by using augmented AI. And I think last but not the least is that anytime you start an AI project, you need to understand, what is the use case? What is the business case around it? Where will you gain the value? Because if there is no value, there is no point doing AI for sake of doing it. So first thing is you understand the business case, collect the data, make sure it is clean, balanced data, and then do a small proof of concept, and make sure that it is quite representative of the actual data, because it's very easy to come up with a very close, very small functionality and make it work automatically. But when you take a represent data, real life practical data, it may fail because there are many nuances which the small representatives, a small set of data will not be able to capture. So I think these are the important points. You start, define the business case, do a representative prototype, and then go in production step by step manner. So I think that the 3 key points I think people should keep in mind.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about AI augmenting human effort. Do you ever see a time where AI will completely replace human effort? So it'll be 100% automation?
I think currently there is a generalized AI and a well-defined AI in a well-defined context. So currently you will be able to see a lot of AI solutions in a well-defined space solving of specific problems. Because each problem needs to have its own tools and techniques. I don't think we have reached a stage where a general purpose AI problem will solve everything. That is a problem that you see with Siri and Alexa, which people are using, right? So I think it is not going to be able to answer all the scenarios. So it is not going to be, but it is well trained to address specific items at a time. So if you talk about whether Alexa will answer well, but not about the traffic, for example, because it doesn't have that knowledge, right? So you have to slowly build various tools, and while doing that, you need to make sure that you have a representative data set, you have a balanced data set, you understand the tools that are available to you, because the same tool will not work, the same model will not work for all use cases. So you need to identify the correct model, understand its limitations, understand the context in which you're working, and then decide what to do. So I think the generalized AI to replace human being is far away, but there are going to be a lot of improvements possible, which can come close to human intelligence. And I think as time progresses, we'll see how we develop how the tools develop, how the knowledge develop, how the systems develop. And again, the regulation is very important, because there are some various regulations coming up in Asia and Europe, which basically make sure that whenever you use AI is actually is ethical, it's transparent, it is balanced, yeah, and unbiased. Yeah. So I think those rules and regulations will also direct you in the right way and making sure that, but the progress will be slower than originally anticipated.
Okay, thanks for that. I think we're almost up against time. There's just one more question, maybe just like you to cover before we do end. I think you've mentioned a few sort of specific use cases that AI can be used for, be deployed for. Can you expand on that and other sort of specific use cases that you've seen during your time for AI?
Yeah, so I think if you look at financial crime, we talked about some use cases in payment scenario, for example, lending, cash flow analysis, process optimization. If you look at compliance, we can talk, I mean, there are 4 areas of compliance where we've seen AI being useful. One of them is sanctions. So in sanctions, you can use natural language processing to understand the context around the entities that you are trying to match. For example, as the example I gave of Iran Street, you can use AI and the natural language processing to actually do fuzzy matching very nicely, the same way humans do. And you can use the contextual analysis to understand whether that hit is a right hit or not. So you can use in sanctions natural language processing for doing an accurate detection in the first place, and also using machine learning based on the data that you have of operator data. You can reduce the false positives that are generated by the system, because they are learning from the past behavior of the operator. You can understand why they were able to, why they were releasing those hits, which you can also learn and automate. And then second thing is in AML, yeah, AML and fraud. Basically, AI can understand and profile a normal behavior of an individual or an organization. For example, payments. When the payments are getting made, it would know that normally the payments are getting made on 9 to 5 during business hours, during weekdays, and if there is a payment released at an unusual time, then it can automatically detect that and flag that. The same way the credit card used to when you used to travel and travel abroad, the credit card did not work initially a few years ago. That's because the system, rule-based system, used to stop that. Now, these kind of programs or rules can be automatically generated by machine learning, and also as time progresses, it would learn. So if the behavior of the customer change, the behavior of the system will also change. And that way, you don't have to keep on writing rules, rewriting rules all the time, and the system will continuously learn. I think the third domain where I see in financial crime AI being useful is the area of trade processing. There are a lot of documents being exchanged during a trade. There are about 8 to 10 to 20 documents which have to go through when the trade finance application or solution is executed. So for example, bill of lading, invoice, letter of credit, all those documents, when you look at it, there's 15 to 17 documents can come into play. A lot of them are paper documents, some of them are Swift messages, but there is a lot of free format information. So you can use AI and natural language processing to extract this data. You need to extract this data, understanding the context, derive the meaning, and make sure that all these documents are consistent, and you can then apply AML sanctions on that once you normalize this data and structured in a proper manner. So I think AI can be used very efficiently and effectively in the area of sanctions, AML, fraud, and TBML or trade finance.
Good. And cost of payment space?
Yeah, in the payment space, as I said, I gave the area of revenue generation. So you can have, once you have clean data, banks have a lot of data on transactions, it can be used for payments in the scope of predictions, insights, customer behavior, and based on that, you can create new products and services, value-added product services, which is of value to the customer. And you can leverage that. On the process optimization side, you can also look at all the transactions which are failing. So there are a lot of time the information that is contained in a payment message, whether it is the empty format or a new MX XML format, you will have some data which is free format, which computers cannot understand. So you can identify this data, normalize the data, structure the data, and make sure that you convert into a format which is automatable, and it can be understandable by the computers, and it can be used to route the transactions correctly. Again, you can also use machine learning to find the typical problems that used to exist, automatically learn the way the operators were handling that, and automate the process intelligently with explanation to say why that particular operation was carried out automatically. So I think these are the areas where you can gain advantage in payments and in compliance. Okay,
thanks, Parth. I think we've overrun our time, so apologies for any attendees for that. So I'd just like to thank Parth for your presentation. Very insightful. Thank you for that. And I'd like to invite all the attendees. Thank you for joining. If anybody has any questions that you'd like to follow up on this, please contact either Parth, myself, or any of the salespeople or people from Pelican. So thanks everybody for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.